Take your hands off her. The words were spoken quietly. That was what made them terrifying. Across the candlelit dining room of Hawthorne House, 32 members of England's most fashionable families fell silent. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. A crystal glass remained suspended in Lady Pembroke's hand. Even the quartet in the adjoining gallery seemed to miss a note. At the far end of the table stood Amelia Hartley. Her face was pale. One sleeve of her blue evening gown had been torn at the shoulder, and a thin red mark circled the inside of her wrist where Lord Adrian Hawthorne's fingers had been gripping her. Adrian released her immediately, not because Amelia had asked him to, because the man standing in the doorway was Alexander Ravenscroft, Duke of Blackmere. And sensible men did not ignore the Duke of Blackmere twice. Alexander did not raise his voice. He did not need to. At 35, he possessed the sort of authority that made rooms rearrange themselves around him. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black evening clothes cut with severe simplicity, he looked less like a guest and more like a verdict that had arrived early. A faint scar marked his left temple. His eyes were gray, cold, unhurried, and at that moment they were fixed entirely on Amelia. "Your Grace," Adrian said carefully, forcing a smile. "This is a family matter." Alexander stepped into the room. No, one word. Nothing more. Adrian's smile tightened. Amelia could hear her own heartbeat. She had known Alexander Ravenscroft for less than 3 weeks. She had spoken to him alone only twice. Yet he looked at the bruising on her wrist as though someone had placed a lit match against gunpowder. Adrian cleared his throat. "My cousin has become confused about her position in this household." Alexander's gaze moved to him. "And what position is that?" Adrian laughed softly. "The position charity permits." Several guests looked down. They all knew. Everyone knew. Amelia Hartley had been living at Hawthorne House for nearly 8 years. Her father, Thomas Hartley, had once served as chief estate steward to the Hawthorne family. He had been respected for his honesty, his astonishing memory for figures, and his ability to detect an error in a ledger from across a room. Then £10,000 vanished. The signatures appeared to be his. The withdrawals had been approved in his hand. And before he could clear his name, Thomas Hartley was found dead beside the river. Society decided guilt had killed him. Amelia knew better. But certainty was not evidence. After his death, their small cottage was sold to satisfy creditors. Friends stopped calling. Invitations disappeared. Men who had once praised Thomas's integrity suddenly remembered that they had never trusted him. The old Marquis of Hawthorne allowed 18-year-old Amelia to remain at Hawthorne House for her father's sake. At first, she believed it was mercy. Over time, she learned what mercy looked like when performed for an audience. She arranged flowers, answered correspondence, supervised household inventories, read to elderly Lady Hawthorne when no fashionable daughter wished to. She sat upstairs when guests were kind, downstairs when they were not. She was not a servant, not family, not quite a guest. She existed in the space between categories, where people found it easy to be cruel because no rule clearly required them to be kind. And for 8 years, Amelia learned the safest way to survive humiliation. Be useful. Be quiet. Expect nothing. Tonight, apparently, even quietness had been too much. Adrian had accused her of stealing a ruby bracelet belonging to his fiancée, Lady Beatrice Ashcombe, in front of everyone. Then he had ordered the butler to search Amelia's room. When Amelia objected, Adrian had grabbed her wrist. That was the moment Alexander entered. He looked at Amelia now. Not Adrian. Not the guests. Her. "Did you take the bracelet?" Amelia swallowed. No, Alexander nodded once, as though the matter were settled. Adrian gave an incredulous laugh. "Surely you do not intend to accept her word in a matter of theft." That did it. Something changed in Alexander's expression. Not anger exactly. Anger was too simple. This was colder. Older. "Careful," he said. Adrian's smile vanished. Alexander crossed the room slowly. When he reached Amelia, his gaze dropped to the red marks around her wrist. His jaw tightened once. Then he removed his gloves. Very deliberately, he offered his arm. "Miss Hartley will be treated as my guest." The sentence struck the room harder than a shout. Adrian stepped forward. "She is not leaving this house with you." Alexander did not even look at him. "That was not a request addressed to you." Amelia's breath caught. For 8 years, every decision had been made around her. Where she lived, which room she entered, whether she attended dinner, what she was allowed to wear, how much humiliation she was expected to swallow with a grateful smile. Alexander was offering his arm, but he was not pulling her toward him. He was waiting. The difference nearly broke something inside her. Slowly, Amelia placed her hand on his sleeve. The Duke of Blackmere turned toward the dining room. His voice was calm. "If Miss Hartley's room is searched tonight, I will consider it an accusation made under my observation." Adrian's face changed. Everyone in the room understood what that meant. Alexander Ravenscroft had spent 9 years in Parliament ruining men with documents they had assumed no one would ever find. An accusation made under his observation would not remain a family matter. It would become a question, and questions asked by Blackmere had a habit of becoming investigations. Alexander guided Amelia toward the door. They had almost reached it when Adrian called after them. "You have no idea what she is." Alexander stopped. For the first time that evening, he smiled. It was not a kind smile. "No," he said, "but I am beginning to understand what you are." Then he walked Amelia out of Hawthorne House. And that was how, after 8 years of being told she should be grateful for whatever scraps were given to her, Amelia Hartley left the house that had buried her father's name, on the arm of the most feared duke in England. What no one in that dining room knew was that Alexander Ravenscroft had not arrived entirely by accident. He had been investigating irregularities connected to the Hawthorne estates. He did not yet know how deep they went. He did not know what Amelia knew. And he had no idea that the missing bracelet was only the first move in a trap meant to silence her forever. 8 years earlier, Amelia Hartley had been 18 and entirely certain her life was about to begin. Her father, Thomas, was not wealthy, titled, or fashionable, but he was respected. For nearly 20 years, he managed the Hawthorne estates with a discipline that bordered on obsession. He could glance at a ledger and remember an incorrect figure months later. Amelia had inherited the same gift. Their evenings were often spent in the small library of Hartley Cottage with estate books spread between them. "Again," Thomas would say. Amelia would groan. "You enjoy this too much. Find a mistake." She would run her finger down columns of rents, repairs, grain prices, wages. Then stop. £14, 6 shillings. Her father would grin. "Where?" "The North Mill repairs. Entered twice. You will frighten your husband one day." "I have no intention of marrying a man frightened by arithmetic." Thomas would laugh. On rainy evenings, he sometimes made the game harder. He would hide a coin, a letter, even her birthday present somewhere in his desk. When Amelia searched the drawers, he would shake his head and say the same thing. "Never look where furniture tells you to look." She had thought it ridiculous. Years later, those words would save the truth. The November everything changed began with 3 men arriving from Hawthorne House. By sunset, Thomas Hartley had been accused of stealing £10,000 from estate accounts. He denied it. He demanded that the ledgers be compared with older records. No one listened. The signatures were convincing. Several servants confirmed he had worked late in the estate office. A bank clerk produced withdrawal orders bearing his name. 3 days before he was meant to appear before a magistrate, Thomas was found dead beside the river. The conclusion came quickly. Shame. Guilt. Suicide. Amelia knew her father hated deep water. But grief was not evidence. Within weeks, Hartley Cottage was sold. Their furniture disappeared. The small inheritance Thomas had saved for his daughter vanished to creditors. Then came the offer from the old Marquis of Hawthorne. Amelia could live at Hawthorne House. For your father's sake. She accepted because she had nowhere else to go. At first, she believed it would be temporary. Then months became years. The old Marquis died. His eldest son inherited, then died after a short illness. Eventually, Adrian Hawthorne became master of the house, and Amelia's position deteriorated. Adrian preferred small cruelties. A place card removed moments before dinner. A borrowed gown never returned. An invitation forgotten. A servant instructed to address her as though she were staff. You understand, Adrian once told her, smiling. Appearances matter. Amelia understood perfectly. He wanted her grateful enough to remain and ashamed enough never to speak. But in the first year after her father's death, Amelia noticed something. One estate ledger did not match a bank copy. Only 1 page. Only 3 numbers. But the figures had been altered after her father signed the account. Amelia began looking. Quietly, she copied figures, recorded dates, tracked payments to companies she could not locate. She learned which clerks could be bribed with politeness and which required coins. She discovered mortgages on properties that should have been debt-free. Large sums moved through accounts connected to Adrian's uncle. Once, she found a reference to something called the Calder Trust. The page disappeared the following week. So Amelia learned patience. 8 years of it. She copied everything. Not because anyone believed her. Because one day someone might have to. Somewhere else in England, another person began noticing irregularities linked to the same family. Alexander Ravenscroft first saw Amelia on a rainy morning in a solicitor's office. She did not see him. She was 19 then, dressed in black, standing at the reception desk with papers clutched against her chest. "I only need Mr. Weaver to look at them," she told the clerk. "Mr. Weaver does not accept charity cases." "I am not asking for charity." The clerk barely looked up. "Then perhaps you can pay his consultation fee." Amelia's cheeks colored. "How much?" 20 guineas. There was a long silence. Alexander was waiting in an adjoining office. At 27, he had only recently inherited the Blackmere title after his father's death. He was drowning in lawsuits, hidden debts, and neglected estates. Through the half-open door, he watched Amelia lower her eyes. "I see." She turned to leave. One paper slipped from her parcel. Alexander saw numbers. Hawthorne accounts. And beneath them, in a neat female hand, the figures do not reconcile. He remembered the sentence. He remembered the wet hem of her black dress. The way she returned for the fallen paper despite the clerk's amusement. The fact that she did not cry until she reached the street. Alexander knew the Hartley scandal. Everyone in financial circles did. At the time, he told himself he had problems enough of his own. He did nothing. For years, that fact bothered him more than he admitted. Then, 6 months ago, Alexander received an anonymous memorandum concerning fraudulent estate bonds. The note mentioned Hawthorne. It did not mention Amelia. It did not say Thomas Hartley was innocent. It merely instructed Alexander to compare Hawthorne land valuations with debt records filed in 2 separate counties. He did. The figures did not reconcile. Within weeks, Alexander found shell companies. Mortgages filed against the same properties more than once. Tenant funds temporarily moved through private accounts. None of it yet proved Adrian's personal involvement. But it was enough to make Alexander watch Hawthorne House more carefully. 3 months ago, at a musicale, he saw Amelia again. She stood beside an elderly lady near the wall. No diamonds. No family gathered around her. No one seemed interested in speaking to her. Yet when a young footman dropped a tray, Amelia was the only person who bent to help him gather the broken glasses. Alexander recognized her immediately. The girl from Weaver's office. Only she was not a girl anymore. He asked discreet questions. He learned she still lived at Hawthorne House. He learned she had once tried repeatedly to clear her father's name. He also learned that Adrian disliked anyone asking about old estate accounts. Alexander did not know whether Amelia had evidence. He did not know whether she was connected to the financial irregularities he was tracing. But he suspected that whatever Hawthorne feared, Amelia Hartley was standing closer to it than she realized. That was why he accepted the invitation to dinner. That was why he noticed Adrian's hand on her wrist. And that was why, long before the evening ended, Alexander decided he was done observing from a distance. The carriage ride away from Hawthorne House was nearly silent. Amelia sat opposite him, hands folded tightly in her lap. London passed outside in blurred lamps and rain-dark stone. Finally, she asked, "Where are you taking me?" "My sister's house." Amelia stared. Alexander added, "Lady Charlotte Wynne. Widowed. 32. Terrible taste in pianists. Excellent judgment in everything else." Despite herself, Amelia almost smiled. "You arranged this?" "I asked Charlotte this afternoon whether she had a spare room." Her expression sharpened. "Before the bracelet disappeared?" "Yes." "You expected something to happen." "I expected Hawthorne to become unpleasant if he thought I was asking questions." "About what?" "The estate." Amelia went still. Alexander watched her carefully. "You know something," he said. "So do you." "Not enough." That answer surprised her. She had expected arrogance. Instead, he sounded irritated by the limits of his own knowledge. Alexander reached inside his coat and removed a folded page. "I found this last week." He handed it to her. A transfer order dated 8 years earlier. For £1,000. The authorization bore Thomas Hartley's signature. Amelia stared, then touched one letter. The H. Alexander leaned forward. "My father always closed the lower stroke." "I noticed." Her head snapped up. "How?" "I found 6 genuine signatures on leases filed before his death. Amelia stared at him. The carriage suddenly felt too small. Why are you looking at my father's signatures? Because the Hawthorne accounts are wrong. Her breath stopped. Alexander continued carefully. I cannot yet prove who altered them. I cannot prove what happened to your father. But I can prove that at least one transfer attributed to him was signed by someone else. For 8 years Amelia had dreamed of hearing something like that. A solicitor, a magistrate, a banker, anyone. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. A tear fell onto the page. Then another. I tried, she whispered. I know you did. No, you don't. Her voice broke. I went to solicitors, banks, my father's old friends, men who ate at our table. One told me a daughter's loyalty was admirable, but not legally useful. Another said grief makes women see patterns where none exist. Alexander became very still. So I stopped asking them to believe me. Amelia said. Good. She looked up sharply. He leaned forward. Now make them fear being wrong. For the first time in 8 years, Amelia felt something stronger than hope. Possibility. Then Alexander asked, do you have copies? And fear returned. Because the answer was yes. And they were still inside Hawthorne House. Lady Charlotte opened her front door shortly after midnight wearing a burgundy dressing gown and carrying a silver candlestick. She looked at Alexander. Then Amelia. Then Amelia's torn sleeve. Her expression hardened. Which man? Amelia blinked. Alexander removed his hat. Hawthorne. Charlotte handed the candlestick to a servant. I never liked him. You said he was charming. I say many things in drawing rooms to prevent murders. She took Amelia's hand gently. You will stay here. I cannot impose. My dear, I have 12 bedrooms, 1 child at Eton and a mother-in-law in Bath. If you fail to impose, I shall be offended. That almost produced a laugh. Almost. The next morning, Amelia woke to sunlight and unfamiliar quiet. Then memory returned. The dinner. Adrian's grip. Alexander. The forged signature. Her documents. She sat up. Her copies were hidden behind a loose panel in the old schoolroom at Hawthorne House. 7 notebooks. For copied ledgers. Letters. Names. Dates. And several references to the Calder Trust. At breakfast, Alexander was already waiting. I have to return, Amelia said. No, Charlotte buttered toast. I shall pretend I am not here. My papers are inside Hawthorne House. Alexander's expression changed. Where? I will show you. You are not returning alone. I did not suggest that. He frowned. Amelia continued. Come with me. Charlotte stopped moving. Alexander stared at Amelia. She explained the plan. He would call on Adrian regarding estate business. Amelia would collect clothing and reach the schoolroom. No, Alexander said when she finished. Amelia lifted an eyebrow. You use that word frequently. It is useful. So is mine. Something almost amused flickered in his eyes. If he realizes what you are doing, he already suspects me. Which makes this dangerous. Your Grace. Nicholas. He stopped himself, irritated. Alexander. Amelia blinked. He repeated it. If we are going to commit burglary together, Alexander will suffice. Despite everything, Amelia laughed. It escaped her. Small. Warm. Real. Alexander looked at her as though the sound had physically touched him. Amelia noticed. And suddenly the breakfast room felt different. She looked away first. Very well, Alexander. His voice was quieter. Amelia. Charlotte lifted her coffee. This burglary is already exhausting. They returned to Hawthorne House at 2 in the afternoon. Adrian received them in the blue drawing room. His face remained composed, but Amelia saw the tension in his hands. You left rather dramatically last evening. Amelia removed her gloves. I was given an excellent arm. Alexander glanced at her. Adrian did not appreciate the remark. Amelia excused herself to collect clothes. Adrian objected. Alexander asked whether Hawthorne intended to deny a lady access to her own possessions in front of servants. Adrian surrendered. Amelia climbed the stairs, past the east corridor, past the portrait gallery, up toward the abandoned schoolroom. She opened the door. Nothing appeared disturbed. She crossed to the old map cabinet and moved it aside. The hidden panel opened. Empty. Amelia stopped breathing. No notebooks. No ledgers. Nothing. Then a voice behind her said, Looking for these? Lady Beatrice Ashcombe stood in the doorway holding one of Amelia's notebooks. Adrian's fiancée. 24. Beautiful. Blonde. And terrified. Amelia's blood ran cold. Beatrice closed the door. I found them 2 days ago. Amelia said nothing. Adrian asked me to search your room. So you searched the schoolroom? No, something changed in Beatrice's face. I followed him. Amelia stared. I thought he was meeting another woman. A humorless laugh. How embarrassing. She handed Amelia the notebook. Amelia did not take it. Why? Because I read it. Silence. My father invested £40,000 with Adrian last year. Amelia understood. The Calder Trust. Beatrice went pale. You know that name? I have seen it in the accounts. The investment is secured against Hawthorne land. A voice from the doorway answered. Land already pledged elsewhere. Both women turned. Alexander stood there. Beatrice inhaled sharply. Your Grace. Alexander closed the door. I have found 2 mortgages tied to the same Hawthorne property. That does not yet prove the Calder Trust is fraudulent, but it makes it very dangerous. Beatrice sat down. My father could be ruined. If the money is gone, Alexander said. Is it? I don't know yet. That uncertainty mattered. For once, Alexander did not have the final answer, and Amelia realized that whatever came next, they would have to find it together. Where are the rest of my notebooks? She asked. Beatrice looked toward the floor. In Adrian's study. Amelia's stomach dropped. He knows. He knows you were looking. And the older estate records? I don't know. Alexander looked toward Amelia. We leave. She did not move. Something had returned to her memory. Not a document. A voice. Her father laughing. Never look where furniture tells you to look. My father's desk. Alexander turned. What? When he died, his desk was removed from the estate office. Where? West Storage. Why would evidence still be there after 8 years? Because no one knew where he hid things. They reached the West Storage rooms through a corridor rarely used by guests. The desk stood beneath a dust sheet. Oak. Scratched. Heavy. Amelia touched it. For a moment she was 18 again. Find the mistake. Her throat tightened. She opened the drawers. Empty. One after another. Alexander watched. Then Amelia knelt. He crouched beside her. What are you looking for? Where the furniture is not telling me to look. Her hands moved beneath the desk. Wood. Wood. Then metal. A recessed catch. Click. A false panel dropped open. Alexander looked at her. Amelia almost laughed through sudden tears. My father. Inside was a thin leather packet. Documents. Original account sheets. Letters. Receipts. And a signed memorandum. Alexander read first. His face changed. What? He handed it to her. The scheme was larger than Adrian. Much larger. His father. His uncle. 2 bankers. A member of parliament. For years, Hawthorne Associates had borrowed against land already pledged elsewhere, inflated estate values, and shifted money through trusts and private accounts. Thomas Hartley discovered inconsistencies. He refused to approve one final transfer. The next section contained copied correspondence showing pressure placed on him to sign. Then one line froze Amelia's blood. Payment to Robert Crane. £50. 3 days before Thomas died. A later notation read, Crane, river matter settled. Amelia's hands went numb. They killed him. Her voice sounded far away. Alexander took the page. He did not pretend uncertainty where there was none. This strongly suggests someone paid Crane in connection with your father's death. Amelia remained on the floor. They killed my father. The years collapsed. Whispers. Pity. Laughter. 8 years of wondering whether she had failed him. Alexander knelt. Look at me. She could not. Amelia. His voice was not commanding. It was anchoring. She lifted her eyes. You found it. Tears blurred him. Too late. No, he is dead. Yes. I cannot give him back his life. No, her voice broke. I cannot tell him I believed him. Alexander's expression changed. He knew. How could you know that? Because he hid the truth in a desk and taught his daughter how to find what other people missed. A sob escaped her. Alexander hesitated only a moment. Then he put his arms around her. She should have stepped away. He was a duke. They were alone. Every rule she had been taught should have mattered. None did. Amelia buried her face against his coat and wept. Alexander held her without speeches, without promises. After several minutes, Amelia pulled back. You saw me before. He went still. At the solicitor's office. Yes. You knew I had tried to prove my father innocent. Yes. Why did you not help me then? The question landed hard. Alexander did not evade it. I should have. That is not an answer. No, he looked at the desk. I was 27. My father had just died. I had inherited debts, lawsuits, and 3 neglected estates. I saw you. I saw the papers. And I told myself it was not my concern. Amelia said nothing. I have regretted that for 8 years. So this is guilt. Partly. And the rest. For the first time since she had known him, Alexander Ravenscroft looked uncertain. It transformed him. The rest, he said slowly, is significantly more inconvenient. Amelia's heart began to pound. Alexander, I think about you when I should be working. Her breath caught. I notice when you enter rooms. He moved no closer. I know you dislike sweet wine. I know you read the last page of novels before the first chapter. How do you know that? You did it at Charlotte's. Oh, you tap your second finger against your thumb when calculating. Amelia looked down. She was doing it now. Alexander almost smiled. You pretend not to be frightened when you are furious. Her eyes returned to his. And when you laughed at breakfast, I forgot what I was saying. Silence. Rain began against the windows. So no, he said. This is not only guilt. What is it? Alexander held her gaze. You know what it is. She did. Before either of them could say more, footsteps sounded outside. The door opened. Adrian stood there with 2 servants. His face went white when he saw the papers. Then he smiled. Excellent, he said. Now we can finally discuss the documents Miss Hartley stole. The accusation was clever. Adrian claimed Amelia had fabricated papers to clear her father. He produced her copied notebooks as proof of obsession. He told everyone she had entered locked rooms. He suggested Alexander had been manipulated by a desperate woman. The story spread through London by morning. Disgraced thief's daughter seduces powerful duke. Produces miraculous evidence. Attempts revenge. Alexander wanted to take the original documents directly to investigators. Amelia stopped him. Not yet. They stood in Charlotte's library. Why? Because Adrian will claim the papers are fabricated unless we connect them to records he cannot control. Alexander stared at her, then slowly nodded. The banks. And the investors. And the mortgages. Yes. Charlotte watched them. You two are terrifying together. Over the next 3 days, Alexander did what he did best. He used influence. He obtained certified copies of mortgage filings, bank confirmations, Calder Trust subscription records. He placed duplicate evidence with his solicitor and with a magistrate he trusted. Amelia did what she did best. She read every page. She found the pattern. 3 supposedly independent investments were all secured against the same Hawthorne land. 2 payment dates matched transfers listed in her father's packet. A letter from Adrian to Robert Crane was not enough by itself to prove murder. But combined with the payment record and Crane's later disappearance, it was enough to reopen questions no one wanted reopened. Then Amelia proposed the final move. A dinner. Charlotte stared. A dinner? At Hawthorne House. Alexander looked at Amelia as though she had suggested setting herself on fire. No, she ignored him. Adrian believes society is his shield. So remove it. How? Make the people he deceived hear the same answers at the same time. Alexander understood. You want the investors present? Yes. And Ashcombe? Yes. And the 2 bankers? Yes. What about the magistrate? He should already have copies before dinner. Alexander's expression shifted. That was better. This was not a theatrical confrontation replacing an investigation. It was a trap designed to stop Adrian from rewriting the story afterward. 3 nights later, Hawthorne House held the most anticipated dinner of the season. Adrian believed he had arranged it to restore his reputation. In reality, Amelia and Alexander had quietly shaped the guest list through invitations, suggestions, and social pressure. Every important investor in the Calder Trust was present. Lord Ashcombe, Lady Pembroke, 2 bankers, 3 members of Parliament, and Alexander Ravenscroft. Amelia arrived last. The room fell silent. She wore silver. Not extravagant, not apologetic. Her father's small sapphire pendant rested at her throat. Adrian approached. You have courage coming here. Amelia looked around the room. No, I simply have records. His expression tightened. Dinner began. For 20 minutes, everyone pretended civilization remained intact. Then Lord Ashcombe placed his glass down. My daughter tells me there are questions regarding the Calder Trust. Adrian smiled. Unfortunate rumors. Alexander spoke from across the table. Then you will have no objection to answering them. Silence. Adrian's gaze hardened. Amelia watched his right hand. Still. Too still. He was frightened. Good. Lord Ashcombe produced a certified document. My bank has no record of unencumbered land matching the security described. Another man spoke. Nor mine. Alexander placed 3 mortgage deeds on the table, all using overlapping Hawthorne property. Whispers erupted. Adrian stood. This proves nothing. Amelia remained seated. Then perhaps these will. She opened her father's leather packet. The original memorandum moved first to Lord Ashcombe, then the letters, then the payment record to Robert Crane. Adrian's face drained. She forged them. I expected you to say that, Amelia replied. Alexander produced a sealed envelope, which is why certified copies and handwriting comparisons were delivered to a magistrate this afternoon. That was the moment Adrian understood. The dinner was not the investigation. The investigation had already begun. This was the moment he lost control of the room. You planned this, he said. Amelia looked at him. Yes. He lunged for the papers. Alexander was already standing. He caught Adrian's wrist before he reached her. Fast. Effortless. Adrian froze. Alexander's voice dropped. I warned you once about putting your hands near her. Every person at the table heard. Adrian jerked free. You think she will choose you? The words burst from him. Amelia stared. So did everyone else. Adrian laughed harshly. That is what this is, isn't it? Blackmere playing rescuer. Alexander said nothing. Adrian turned on Amelia. You think a duke loving you changes what you are? The old instinct rose. Shrink. Look away. Disappear. 8 years of training. Then Amelia remembered her father. Find the mistake. She looked directly at Adrian. You still do not understand. His smile faltered. This was never about whether a duke loved me. She stood. It was about whether you could make me believe I was nothing unless someone powerful said otherwise. The room went silent. Amelia stepped closer. You failed. Something in Adrian's face broke. Because Alexander was not standing in front of Amelia. He was beside her. There was a difference. A servant entered. Then the magistrate. 2 officers followed. They did not arrest Adrian for murder that night. The evidence was not yet enough for that. But he was taken for questioning regarding fraud, falsified mortgages, and misappropriated investment funds. The murder inquiry reopened days later. Robert Crane was eventually found living under another name near Bristol. Money changed hands. Statements were taken. The truth emerged slowly. Painfully. But it emerged. The investigation lasted 5 months. The scandal lasted longer. Adrian was convicted of fraud and conspiracy. His uncle was implicated. One banker fled England. Another turned state's evidence to avoid a harsher sentence. The man who arranged Thomas Hartley's death was prosecuted after Crane testified to being paid to force Thomas into the river and make the death appear self-inflicted. Thomas Hartley's name was formally cleared. 8 years after London called him a thief, newspapers printed a different word. Innocent. Amelia bought every edition she could find. She kept one beside her bed. Framed another. The third she placed on her father's grave. Alexander went with her. The cemetery was quiet. Late spring. White flowers moving in the wind. Amelia knelt beside the stone. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she whispered, They know now. Alexander stood several feet behind her, giving her privacy. As always, Amelia noticed the things he thought she did not. When she returned, he offered his arm. She did not take it. His expression shifted. Amelia walked past him. Alexander frowned. Then she turned. Are you ever going to ask me? Ask you what? The Duke of Blackmere, terror of Parliament and destroyer of financial conspiracies, appeared genuinely confused. Amelia almost laughed. You told me 5 months ago that you think about me when you should be working. I remember. You told me you notice when I enter rooms. Yes. You stood beside me through an investigation that nearly damaged your political career. It did not. You threatened Adrian at dinner. He was irritating. Alexander. He looked at her. Are you ever going to ask me what happens after? Understanding moved across his face. Slowly. I told Charlotte I would not consider after until you were free of Hawthorne. I am free. I know. And Alexander said nothing. Then Amelia understood. He was afraid. Not of scandal. Not of Parliament. Of her answer. The realization softened her. I have spent months ensuring you could make choices for yourself, he said. I will not become another man deciding your future because I believe I know what is best for you. You are not. I could be. You are not listening. His gaze returned. Amelia stepped closer. I am making a choice now. Alexander became very still. She held out her hand. exactly as he had done the first night at Hawthorne House. Not a command. A request. Alexander looked at it, then at her. Amelia smiled. Reminding you. His expression broke. The coldness disappeared. The calculation. The control. Alexander Ravenscroft looked at her as though he had been holding his breath for 8 years. He took her hand. Amelia. Yes. I love you. She smiled wider. I know. That is an intolerably arrogant answer. I learned from a duke. He laughed, then grew serious. Marry me. That was abrupt. I can give a speech. How long? I have had 5 months. Good Lord. Amelia. She laughed. Yes. Alexander stopped breathing. Yes, Alexander. He kissed her beside her father's grave, gently at first, as though even now he needed to be certain she had chosen it. Amelia rose onto her toes and kissed him again. That ended his hesitation. They married in June. Not at Westminster Abbey. Not at Blackmere Cathedral. Amelia refused both. Instead, they married in the small village church near the cottage where she had grown up. Charlotte cried before the ceremony and denied it afterward. Beatrice Ashcombe attended quietly. She had ended her engagement the night Adrian was questioned. 2 years later, she married a physician with neither title nor interest in fraudulent trusts. Amelia used part of the money recovered from her father's estate to establish a legal assistance fund for women and families unable to afford proper representation. Alexander pretended this surprised him. It did not. On the evening of Amelia's first great ball as Duchess of Blackmere, more than 400 guests filled Ravenscroft House. The same people who had once looked past her now turned when she entered. The transformation was not in her gown, though it was beautiful, nor in the diamonds at her throat, nor in the title announced at the door. It was in the way she walked. 8 years earlier, Amelia had entered rooms searching for walls, corners, places to disappear. Tonight, she descended the staircase without looking for one. Alexander waited at the bottom. Charlotte, standing nearby, noticed his expression. You still do that? Alexander did not look away. Do what? Forget other people exist. That sounds inefficient. It is extremely obvious. Amelia reached the final step. Alexander held out his hand. She took it. Around them, conversation slowly resumed. Then Amelia noticed an elderly gentleman near the ballroom doors. Mr. Weaver, the solicitor whose office had turned her away 8 years earlier. He bowed deeply. Your Grace. Amelia stopped. Alexander followed her gaze. Mr. Weaver looked uncomfortable. I have wished for some time to offer an apology. Amelia said nothing. He swallowed. I should have listened to you. 8 years ago, those words might have changed everything. Now they were simply true. Amelia smiled politely. Yes, she said. You should have. Then she walked on. Alexander waited until they were beyond hearing. That was cruel. No, her eyes sparkled. That was accurate. I am desperately in love with you. So you keep telling me. The orchestra began a waltz. Alexander turned toward her. Dance with me. Amelia looked around the ballroom. Hundreds of people were watching. Once, that would have terrified her. Now their attention hardly mattered. She looked at Alexander, the man who had once offered his arm when everyone else expected her to lower her head. The man who helped her find the road to the truth but did not walk it for her. The man who knew when to investigate, when to protect, and finally, when to wait. Amelia placed her hand in his. Yes. They stepped onto the dance floor. As Alexander drew her into the first turn of the waltz, Amelia caught sight of herself in one of the enormous gilded mirrors. For the briefest moment, she remembered the 18-year-old girl in the solicitor's office. Wet black dress, papers clutched against her chest, trying desperately to make one person listen. Then she remembered Hawthorne House, the removed place cards, the servants' hall, the whispers, Adrian's hand around her wrist, and the doorway, Alexander standing there. Take your hands off her. The memory no longer hurt in the same way, because that night had not been the moment a duke rescued her. It had been the moment someone finally gave her enough room to stand up. The rest had been hers. Alexander leaned closer. What? Amelia realized she was smiling. Nothing. You are smiling. I am allowed. His hand tightened gently around hers. Yes, he said. You are. They turned beneath 1,000 candles. And for the first time in her life, Amelia Hartley did not glance toward the edges of the ballroom. She did not search for the safest corner. She did not calculate how little space she was permitted to occupy. She stayed exactly where she was, in the center of the room. And when the Duke of Blackmere looked at his wife as though the rest of London had disappeared, Amelia laughed. This time, no one dared look away.